Welcome. This is Bridges Muchi Bakochola.
Prison quality
as we build a sustainable environment for growth. Putting the country's development first is an imperative in the scheme of global matters. There has been long-standing donor fatigue. We have been donor funded or supported for so long that we seem to have lost the right perspectives on nations' well-being. However, the recent pronouncement in the donor world with the withdrawal of, let's use USAID as an example, funding, has shaken the foundations of the funded world, Nigeria included. It is a reality check for us all. However, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's announcement of the release of the significant amount of $1.07 billion for HIV/AIDS ART commodities is being adjudged as the right step in the right direction. We should be moving from begging cups to cooking pots to solve our own problems, that is, cooking our soups for our hungry, so to say. That's the heart of today's discussion on bridges as we attempt to build self-sufficiency on our nation's strategic, social, and economic well-being. My guests today are, to my extreme right, Dr. Laz Ude-Eze, a public health and communication expert. Laz, you're welcome on Bridges. Laz happened to be one of our very, very first resource persons on Bridges when we started several years back. We're happy to have you back.
Thanks
Now, from England, we have our sister join us, Dr. Lola Dari. She's on Zoom. She's president of Chestnut Global, a public health and development expert. There's something happening here on the set today. And to my immediate right is Dr. Omo Ubi Ufoma, public affairs, public analyst, commentator, and development experts. And development experts goes to all of you. Thank you so much for coming on Bridges. So here we are. We have the donor fatigue, we have donor removal, we have donor cut down, and all of this affects some areas of development in our country. Let's start with Nigeria. I listened to one of our former African presidents who says that, why are we crying? That is it our country? Let's look inside. Let's have your thoughts first. Let's start with you. I call him Dr. Options.
Yes, you have options.
Yes. Let's start with you. What are the consequences of these new development in national development that we as a country, or lessons that we learn, storm, opportunities in the storm? Yeah. What are they?
Thank you very much, Dr. Moji, and it's really great that we have the opportunity to have this conversation at this time. And really fantastic thing, from begging cups to cooking pots. What that suggests to me is that perhaps we have the ingredients and everything. It's just that we shifted our focus, living a beautifully blessed, natural, human resources that's available for us to cook something really good for the Republic and for our citizens. And we just took a cup and put our hands up, which is what you said that president was talking about. What this is, I would say, to African leaders and community leaders and to politicians, is a big slap, is, I would say, in one side, and a clear opportunity to redirect our energies as a people, to redirect our focus. Do we have the people? Yes. Do we have the resources? Yes. Are we using it well? I would say absolutely not. Even what we have not managed well. And that's why it's like a misnomer. You know, the implications are really great because we abandon things, we abandon the opportunity to make our lives and the people that we are accountable for better by begging. And that's why this withdrawal has come with a shock. Countries are in shock. Presidents, you can see, presidents are making comments. Executive councils across Africa are convening meetings. Some of the big meetings that we used to hear of are not so popular again because people who pay for them are no longer available. So it's a slap that goes to, I would say, redirect us. What are the immediate risks? The immediate risk is that we are like sitting on a keg of gunpowder as a people. When we talk about, I know there was a focus on HIV/AIDS. Look at Nigeria. There are millions of people living with HIV/AIDS and on HIV/AIDS drug. There are close to 3 million people that are living with HIV/AIDS that are on medication in this republic. So, all of a sudden, we know that from the small information on the streets that once you start this drug, you take it for life. For you to have a healthy baby, you know, as a HIV pregnant woman, automatically the drugs you should be taking to prevent mother-to-child transmission has been stopped. So these are real implications. What about malaria? What about financial inclusion? Some of the projects that are, what about agriculture? So we're talking about food security. We're even talking about national security. We heard from all the stories that have been put forward that USAID, as has been construed, uses soft power, does diplomacy, creates an open society. So I'll be asking questions. Our national security agencies, this is a wake-up call. It's like somebody has been snitching on you and at the same time not telling you all of a sudden, I withdraw everything. It's an opportunity, in crisis.
First, we should be appropriately allocating to the health, not a percentage, to all sectors, not by percentage, but by need. A percentage-based budgeting does not allow us to respond to the need in our health plans and to the need in our national development plans. Two, we should also ensure that we are filling gaps with domestic resources as a blend, not as a dependence. As it is now, international resources are not negotiated, they're accepted. So they don't fit into a blend. It is in this regard that I really welcome the swap approach that is presented by the minister, making sure that we can work in a blend and not just in silos of financing. That will ensure that the resources that come are additive to what we have and they do not substitute it. Currently, we have a lot of substitution in health, not a lot of addition. But more importantly, is mobilization of domestic resources. In 2015, it was very clear, crystal clear, that we are going to move from aid to trade. This is not a new thing. President Trump is just calling our attention to what we already know since MDG transition to SDG. Aid must become trade. Begging cups must become cooking pots. We must stop. The international resources have helped us quite significantly in reducing maternal mortality, in reducing access, in increasing access to medications and drugs. But there is getting to the last mile must depend on our domestic resources. Now, in Chestrad, we use the term domestic resourcing and not domestic financing. Mr. Trump has absolute rights to determine what he wants for his country. We also must support Mr. President of Nigeria to do absolutely the best for Nigeria through advocacy and through appropriate suggestion of solutions that we can push. Domestic resourcing means he's domestically financing his needs and negotiating the budget. Number two, is financing capacity of his institutions and building domestic institutional capacity. We must use our money to support our own institutions as well.
Thank you. I know that you're eager to jump on it. Yes, Laz, let's hear your thoughts on this.
But I want to provide some context on the whole scenario. Just as a country, we've been getting this support for years. One would have expected that should there be any cut in the support, it could have been done in a better way. However, it's not surprising the way it was done for any close observer of the electoral process in the United States and the remarks being made by the current president. So, but from where we are, what's the next step? I received a message the week this happened from someone living with HIV. Sent me a WhatsApp message that he's worried. Said, what's the problem? Said the withdrawal of USAID funding, that he feels like he's going to die very soon. Then I was like, no, the federal government of Nigeria is taking steps to ensure that you keep getting your drugs. But it kind of touched me, the kind of anxiety,
That it has brought
the
forth.
kind of panic on individuals, particularly these people who are on drugs, which skipping a day or two could predispose them to having resistance. You know, it's a huge problem and huge crisis on its own. But the flip side is it has provided an opportunity, even though it's in an abrupt manner, for us to reflect how we want to fund health going forward. Not just health, the critical areas of our economy, like you mentioned, the agriculture, governance, security. So all these areas where we have significant donor support. So, and I'm happy to hear that the federal government has made certain approvals to immediately bridge this gap. But we need to have that conversation going forward. And there are different dimensions to it. Apart from immediate release of funds, we also have to look at local production, because given the exchange rate now, we need tons of trillions of naira to get what perhaps billions could get before. And do we have that money to put in this space? Of course, there are several needs, developmental needs in the country. So, but when we now have a medium to long-term plan to begin to produce some of these things, it has a lot of implications for us. It's going to create jobs, it's going to be cheaper for us, and going to enhance the economy of Nigeria. And we'll spend less, other than every year budgeting huge sum of money to procure commodities from outside. So some of this conversation, I know it's been had several times. For example, on immunization, we talk about local vaccine production. We've been talking about it for over a decade, and we've not really seen much progress in terms of, do we have companies on ground that there are over 100 pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria. Some of them will argue that it's cheaper to import than to produce in the country. You know, so this is a period to have those.
To harness what we have.
Absolutely.
To harmonize what we have going forward as we try to build a bridge of sustainability, which is our focus on this program. Well, a lot of conversation is going on, and a lot of information is awashed, particularly on the social media. Now, do we need as a country to what should we need in terms of cohesion, so that the misinformation that are misinformation, we discussed this before coming on set, so that will actually bring us together to see what are the priority areas that as a country we should be looking at. Now, any of you can jump in.
Yeah, so let me go first. I worry about underinformation, misinformation, and complete information, because the best way to cause chaos is to misinform and misalign people. It's rumored that a lot of the people who are taking this action back in the US, for example, are just jumping on half and half information. And the misinformation has revealed a lot of things to us, you're right? And also have put a lot of people at risk. And that is where I think government needs to really step in, and maybe civil society needs to have a bigger approach to what has been put forward by a lot of people out there. You know, like you said, I was shocked to see reputable journalists name calling and name tagging. It tells you that people don't even understand the process of even how payments are made. You know, if you make a payment, people know in government or any company, you invoice people and it takes time for you to honor payment. So you can't just come and say, investigate. Why making Nigeria look as if, our country look as if we are corrupt? They pay people their entitlement. You say, come and investigate. So there's a lot of misinformation, but in that is the opportunity and the strength that civil society needs to come out and tell their stories better. We tell people to invest in communication because even locally, we talk about financing, for example. There are billionaires in this republic that can step up, that can support Nigeria. What we have, like we spoke about critical infrastructure for manufacturing, nobody's going to save this republic. Nobody's going to save this republic. That's the body language. We see that Europe is already making, the European Parliament met last week and said they need to make cuts. The Dutch have cut 2.5 billion. The Belgians have done the same. We hear the Brits are also thinking about cuts. Everybody is cutting. So what are we doing as a people? So is this not the time to tackle civil society or NGOs and say, oh, those are the people, they have been wasting. There's no wastage, I would say, at this time. Don't paint what you don't know so badly, because organizations have been working to provide critical services. And the truth is that government has the biggest workforce ever when it comes to some of these things. And what we need to do is to harmonize and get back to the drawing board, clarify things clearly, and not begin to name tag or pursue people who are just doing their everyday job, and doing it very well in that matter. So there needs to be a lot of communication, I say clarity being provided. Also around what government's action is. I will say this at this stage, we talked about, you mentioned whatever. This republic, Mr. President, boldly at the Executive Council, I would say, appointed, as well, a presidential advisor to lead a procurement of essential health commodity to strengthen the value chain. Dr. Mukhtar. Dr. Mukhtar is doing a brilliant job, supported by our honorable minister. However, if Mr. President has given a mandate and have said there should be waivers, like you spoke about manufacturing, waivers given to manufacturers since last year, and this is February, other agencies that should be collaborating to make things happen and not making it happen, would we see progress? So there's something around taking government serious, even your boss serious. Because while PVAC is doing all it can, they're not going to force and bend over customs or Federal Internal Revenue Agency to say, who are still collecting those taxes, making it difficult for, like you said, it's easy for people to import rather than produce locally.
So we are looking at regulatory agencies. There must be harmonization here. We cannot have one segment promoting sufficiency and other side of it not actually being on that part of the country, on that side of development plans. What are your takes, Dr. Laz?
Yes, there's very good need for more collaboration and for everybody in the governance system to key into helping to achieve the results. Last year, the executive order was signed, to address some of the barriers that the local manufacturing industries have complained about. The active pharmaceutical ingredients mostly come from outside the country, and these are essential things that is required to produce drugs and commodities. But when some of these taxes and levies are imposed on it, it kind of makes it more expensive, and that's where the custom, like you mentioned, comes in, some of the IRS, the Internal Revenue Services. So you need to act fast. We know that, yes, there is this behavior in the bureaucracy, okay, everything takes time, but there are some things that shouldn't take time. The inflation in the country has made it in a way that even some drugs that are considered cheap are off the roof, in terms of cost, that people are really struggling, that people are dying from situations they shouldn't die from. So it's something that should be considered an emergency. This is a health security issue, and health, medical security or health security, if you like, is also a national security issue where security of lives cannot be guaranteed. It's not until people take guns, to kill before it's considered a security issue.
Cascades and it's
In this situation,
yeah.
ailments are killing people, ailments that shouldn't kill. And we expect that level of response. And coming to the this information that he talked about, I feel pained, reading some of the comments out there from people who should know better. And in journalism, in the media, there is objectivity is a key requirement. That no matter the information you get, you make deliberate efforts to get on the other side.
Just before we round it up, how deep is these funding that we get, from external sources? How deep are they?
Quite frankly, overall, Nigeria is not donor dependent. If you look at the data we have from past years, 6% of our total budget is donor dependent as an overall, but the health sector is donor dependent, and most of the money that comes to the health sector comes from donors. So even when you look at the overall resource envelope for Nigeria and you say we're not donor dependent, I'm not sure what the current figure is. So I'm not sure that we should worry as a country about donor dependence, but as a sector in health, the health sector is very donor dependent and very donor accountable. What does that mean for us? It means that we either are planning for more than our pockets can absorb, or we are ineffectively using our resources and depending on external resources to do the right things for us. So we are donor dependent to some extent we are donor resourced to some extent as a country and donor dependent in the health sector. This is from a study published by the Committee on Appropriation of the Senate in 2018, and we're happy to share the report with you.
If you look at from the total health or national health accounts, the last analysis that was done, of course, out-of-pocket expenditure, more than 70%. All the government expenditure, perhaps a little above 20%. So donor support is less than 5%. However, if you now come to where this support is going, like AIDS, TB, and malaria, or say take HIV, for example, the diagnosis, treatment, and care, is over 90%.
So the importance of where we are is that the critical sector, the most essential, is being covered by external forces. Most times, my uncle will say, what is dear to you, you keep to your heart, right? But what we have done is that what is dear to us the most, we have put in the hands of others. And that's where it's a big risk. Whether it's agriculture.
Is it cookable, if we can use that semantics?
I think we need to change the narrative.
Okay.
I think this is not the time to mourn. At first, when this all happened, I felt that, oh my God, this is serious. But at the same time, I started seeing the narrative, from people around the world and from Americans themselves. Lazy, I would say some lazy facts, data, information, and people just cooking stuff. And I felt, oh, this is time for us to wake up. We are Nigerians, we are the giants of Africa. This is time for us to take the bull by the horns. Let our leaders be more accountable, utilize our resources better, much more efficiently. We'll be better for it.
Number one is to effectively organize philanthropy. When we estimated the volume of annual philanthropy in Lagos from 10% of organized philanthropy is in excess of 10 billion naira annually. It may sound a little, but it's a lot when you blend with other sources and effectively allocate. Two, we must look at a value chain that allows people to co-pay health and communicate that health is co-paid and not health is free. So communication is very important. We must work with the private sector to ensure that there is shared value. But more importantly, we must move aid to trade. Instead of accepting aid is accepted, trade is negotiated. Mm-hmm. So when we move aid to trade, it enables us not to think of like recipients with cups, but partners with cooking pots that benefits its people. Aid is always in country interest that gives the aid, but trade is in mutual interest. So aid to trade is a beneficial thing that moves us from cups to bowls and from begging to mutual interest.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. We can make it happen as a country. The federal, not just the federal, but the states need to come in. Because usually we leave this conversation up there. State governors and the Nigeria Governors Forum, they need to have an emergency meeting with the federal folks, let there be a national consensus on how we respond to this situation going forward, and put in place a situation where we never find ourselves in this kind of situation again.
And I would say that it's an emergency. Look at these numbers. Let's use HIV/AIDS as whatever. Nigerians, our leaders, we see how HIV devastated most of East Africa. You don't want that, because when we talk about HIV, it's talking about prevention, treatment, and care. If Nigerian government is only putting money for 150,000 people, and there are millions of people on ARVs already, we are sitting on a keg of gunpowder.
Thank you so much, both of you, for bearing your hearts. I knew you were speaking from your hearts, and I hope that this will also resonate with all of us watching. Thank you, Dr. Lola, also for your inputs. Well, the conversation, viewers, I promise you will continue. On our screens, you can see these numbers. Write us. Let us know what you want to discuss, or what exactly you think should be the solution to these begging cups to cooking pots. We have stopped begging. Our pots will be so full that we'll even be able to feel to share. Thanks for watching. Bridges over back, same time next week.